Hi, I'm Matthew Cutler, and this is my presentation on my research paper. The theme that I investigated was science, industry, and the environment. I was looking to connect four artists and artworks under this theme of science and industry and its effect on the environment, and artwork that reflected a story about this. And the four artists that I chose, they're also all linked by geography. They all lived, worked, and have artworks in the northeast of the US. The artists are Frederick Edwin Church, George Inness, David Smith, and Betty Beaumont. We go from the mid-19th century with two American landscape painters who were part of the American landscape movement, Church and Inness, both part of the Hudson River School. And then David Smith was a great sculptor and the best American uh, post-war sculptor. And Betty Beaumont, who's still alive today, working in New York City. The four artworks that I chose, two paintings and two sculptures. The first painting, although painted 4 years after the second painting, but narratively comes earlier because it represents the unspoilt landscape. Church painted with a vision to unite the detail of the landscape with symbolic meaning. Here we see the light shining on the main central iceberg, yet the atmosphere is darkening, like at twilight. The brooding sky is painted in neutral colours, lends a sense of foreboding to the image. The ice forms aggressive, jagged shapes with many triangles and zigzags. And then the fallen mast that signifies those at sea, lost at sea, perhaps exploring these frigid waters, and perhaps even sailing into one of these icebergs. The picture is asymmetrical but balanced. The large central iceberg leans to the right of the center, leading to more bulky ice to the right. And this is offset by the perspective distancing this iceberg in comparison to the big foreground ice on the left. We only see part of it, but it covers the side, making it seem heavier. The emphasis is created by the light shining on the central iceberg, again bringing the focus to nature's creation, gleaming like a trophy in the middle of the painting. The second painting, George Inness, is the Lackawanna Valley. I chose this painting because it shows how industry is starting to intrude into nature. Although commissioned by the railroad company to show off its new roundhouse building, the artist takes a more somber approach by painting a lot of fallen tree stumps, hinting at the deforestation that is accompanying this progress. It's another representational oil painting, the lone figure who's resting in the field just watching the oncoming train, perhaps oblivious to the cost that the industry, the Industrial Revolution is going to bring. The composition of the painting allows the eye to travel easily over the canvas, across the undulating landscape, past the rough, dark tree stumps that appear out of focus in the foreground, allowing emphasis to be brought to the objects of the rail car and the roundhouse with sharper focus. And as we see further into the background, the focus blurs again. This again gives the atmospheric perspective effect, and the atmosphere is more dry and intensely coloured in the foreground. The colours, where they're richer and greener in the foreground, in the bottom half of the painting, are more neutral in the hazy, smoky, perhaps polluted air in the sky in the upper half of the picture. The tree in the foreground on the left, also the hues change as you go up into the sky, perhaps again clouded by the smoke. The two trees give an effect of perspective, as one is down by the railroad, and we can assume that it's probably the same size, therefore it looks smaller and hence further away. The third artwork is very different. It's a sculpture, but it uses the material that was perhaps being manufactured at that time. We have steel taken and welded together by David Smith. This is a work of abstract expressionism, abstract because it does not look exactly like the image as seen by the artist. This style, sometimes described as calligraphy or by Smith himself as drawing in space. Here we have a 3D mass, a trapezoidal shape that seems perfectly balanced. It sits on top of a small stand in the shape of a triangle. It makes it look as if it scales with the fulcrum, with the sculpture perfectly balanced on top of that fulcrum. The sculpture is frontal. You should only view it from the front, and then we have the twisting lines of steel. Sometimes they look like recognizable objects, perhaps even the railroad itself. And then finally, we have an underwater sculpture. This is laid on the continental shelf, 3 miles offshore from Fire Island National Seashore. The material used was coal waste. That's a toxic byproduct, and it was transformed into harmless coal fly ash blocks. 17,000 of these blocks were taken out by the barge that you see in the photo here and laid on the seafloor. Described as a piece of land art, which is the use of the earth to create sculpture. This sculpture began to change as soon as it was installed. It became a marine habitat, developing and growing over time. It's designated a fish haven now and can be responsibly fished for food. This is a virtual representation of all those blocks on the seafloor before they became the artificial reef they are today. So in summary, we take the romantic landscapes from the early 19th century, showing the beauty and majesty of the USA before progress came, and artists incorporated something of a warning about the cost of the progress, the Industrial Revolution, and the icebergs, formerly painted by Frederick Church, representing nature intact. Would the artist have known that the polar ice caps melting would become one of the most talked about aspects of climate change? Davis Smith took that steel, like that steel that was being manufactured in the world of the Lackawanna Valley painting. He made it into his version of the Hudson River landscape. And then Betty Beaumont finally shows us that art can be proactive in restoring ecosystems. She gives us a ray of hope that progress can be helpful rather than harmful to the environment, not only taking industrial waste from coal and processing it to make a benign material, but also using the salvage material to create an artificial reef in the Atlantic Ocean, near to where Church voyaged to find his icebergs.